Hello everyone, for today's video lesson, we'll be discussing Module 12, Computing for the Point Estimate and Confidence Interval of the Population Proportion. Confidence interval for population proportion. If p hat is the proportion of successes in a random sample of size n, and q hat is equals to 1 minus p hat, an appropriate 1 minus a percent confidence interval for the binomial parameter p is given by. So, ang sinasabi lang dito is, para makuha si q, kung ano yung makuha natin sa p hat, i-minus natin siya sa 1. And ito yung formula na gagamitin natin. P hat is minus E. E is our margin of error. And this is our lower limit. And sa second naman, may plus siya. And that is our upper limit. Ang pinagkaiba lang niya, sa lower limit, ang operation niya is minus. Sa upper limit naman, ang operation niya is plus. Commonly used confidence level. So, ang importante dito is yung critical value niya. Yung critical value ni degree of confidence. Kuwari, ano yung critical value ni 90%? So, ang critical value ni 90% is 1.645. And sa 95% naman, ang critical value niya is 1.96. Sa 99%, 2.575. Yun lang yung kailangan nating i-memorize sa module na ito. Nasa an example. A random sample of 400 observations from a binomial population produces x is equals to 250. Find the 95% confidence interval for population proportion P. So, our n is 400 observation. 400. This is our n. For x is 250. Our n, 400. Yung sa 95%, ang critical value niya is 1.96. 1.96. So, ang pinakauna dito is hanapin natin si p hat. So, paano yon? Ang gagawin natin is i-divide natin si x tapos si n. So, our x is 200. 250 divided by 400. That is 250 divided by we have 0.625. 0.625. Ngayon, our next step is getting the q hat. So, ima-minus lang natin si 0.625 kay 1. So, 1 minus 0.625. We have 0.375. Yan. Ngayon, dahil meron na tayong p hat at q hat, kukunin natin si SE, si standard error. Ngayon, ano yung formula natin para makuha si standard error? So, we have a square root, fraction line, and then p hat times q hat over n. So, lagay natin yung nagilang natin si p hat at si q hat. 0.625 times 0.375 over what is our n? 400. So, our answer is 0.024. So, our answer is 0.024. Our next step is getting the margin of error. Para makuha si margin of error, kung ano yung nakuha natin sa SE, ita-times natin kay critical value. So, we have 0.024 times 1.96. More times 1.96. We have 0.047. Tama po ba? So, our margin of error is 0.047. Now, dahil meron na tayong margin of error, ilagay na natin siya. So, naalala niyo pa ba yung una nating formula? Sabay ka natin. So, our formula is P hat minus E, then P hat plus E. Wait lang, isin natin. So, this is our formula na gagamitin natin. I-input na natin 0.625 minus 0.047 0.625 plus 0.047. So, ilagay natin sa calculator natin. 0.625 minus 0.047. So we have 0.0578. So our lower limit is 0.578. And our upper limit. Sa upper limit naman, i-plus lang natin. So, 0.725 plus 0.007. So, our upper limit is 0.672. Ay, wait lang, mali. Yan. So we say that we are 95% confident that the population proportion will be between 0.578 and 0.672.
Then here, a random sample of 400 observations from a binomial population produced 250. Estimate the population proportion and standard error. The sample proportion is calculated as the number of successes divided by the total number of observations. So 200 divided by 400. Therefore, the estimate of the population proportion is 0.625. The standard error of the sample proportion is calculated using the formula. Now 1 minus 0.625 equals 0.375. Now we're going to substitute it. Square root 0.625 times 0.375 divided by 400. Now the standard error is 0.0
242.
So, for another example, among 1,500 Filipino women included in a survey showed that 810 are conscious of their figure and 765 exercise twice a week. A, based on the survey results, construct a 95% confidence interval for the proportions of all Filipino women who exercise twice a week. And B, construct a 99% confidence interval for the population proportion of all Filipino women who are conscious of their figure. The formula for the confidence interval is p hat minus the critical value times the square root of p times q over n, and p plus the critical value times the square root of p times q over n, where p hat is the sample proportion, z is the critical value, q is equal to 1 minus the p hat or the sample proportion, and p times q over n is the standard of error. To calculate the sample proportion, the formula is x, which is the total number of success, and n, which is the sample size. The equation will go 765, which is the number of Filipino women who exercise twice a week, over 1,500, which is the total number of women surveyed. So 765 divided by 1,500 is equal to 0.51 or 51%. For Q, the formula is 1 minus the sample proportion. So 1 minus 0.51 is equal to 0.49. Now to solve the confidence interval, the equation will go 0.51 minus 1.96, which is the critical value since the degree of confidence is 95%, times the square root of 0.51 times 0.49 over 1,500, and 0.51 plus 1.96 times the square root of 0.51 times 0.49 over 1,500. So calculate 0.51 times 0.49, which is equal to 0.2499. So the answer is 0.485 and 0.535. Now to interpret, therefore we can say that we are 95% confident that the population proportion will be between 0.485 and 0.535. Now for B, construct a 99% confidence interval for the population proportion of all Filipino women who are conscious of their figure. To calculate the sample proportion, which is x over n, the equation will go 810, which is the number of Filipino women who are conscious of their figure, over 1,500, which is the total number of women surveyed, is equal to 0.54 or 54%. And for Q, 1 minus the sample proportion 0.54 is equal to 0.46. Now to solve the confidence interval, the equation will go 0.54 minus 2.575, which is the critical value since the degree of confidence is 99%, times the square root of 0.54 times 0.46 over 1,500, and 0.54 plus 2.575 times the square root of 0.54 times 0.46 over 1,500. So calculate 0.54 times 0.46, which is equal to 0.2484. So the answer is 0.507 and 0.573. Now to interpret, therefore we can say that we are 99% confident that the population proportion will be between 0.507 and 0.573.
Remember that mathematics may not teach us to add love or subtract hate, but it gives us hope that every problem has a solution. That is all for today's video lesson. I hope you learned something. Bye everyone!